All right, here we go. Special right triangles. I'm running a little bit late, but I did promise I would get these to you. So let's get on to this. Today, what you will do is you will use the properties of a 45, 45 degree and 90 degree triangle or a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle, which are called special right triangles because they're special. Special. Anyways, to analyze the sides of a triangle. So basically, you're going to use that to find the sides of a triangle. So all of this is based off the Pythagorean theorem, which you have worked on before, and that was the a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And you can find those answers, and we did plenty of those. But now we're going to see that there are some ways we don't even really need a calculator very much if we know certain rules. Okay, so let's look at something that helps set you up. If you had a right triangle that had sides 5 and 5, and you needed to find the hypotenuse. Well, you did the 5 squared, a squared plus b squared, 5 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. Well, 5 squared is 25 plus 25, which is 50. Then you would take the square root. Now, previously, I let y'all go ahead and type it in the calculator and give me the decimal answer, but now let's simplify that. And if you simplify that, you would have 50 is 5 and 10, and then 10 is 5 and 2, and you would have a pair of 5, so you'd have a 5 on the outside and a square root of 2 on the inside, or 2 on the inside. You get the idea. Okay, now notice here that the sides are the same. So since the sides were the same, not these two sides right here, the legs of the triangle, in other words, of the right triangle, since those were the same, then that means these angles here that you're seeing, they're the same. And if those are the same, then that means they're equal to 45 degrees. Trust me on that. They're 45 degrees. Okay? So what does that lead me to do? Well, that tells me then I have a special property. Notice that how the answer was what the sides were times the square root of 2. Like the side was 5, and then the hypotenuse ended up being 5 square root of 2. So what that allows us to do is say that in a 45, 45, 90 degree triangle, which is a 45, 45 right triangle, whatever, the legs are congruent and the length of the hypotenuse is square root of 2 times the length of the leg. So, well, that's all the words there, but what does that mean? So there's a picture that kind of gives it to you better. Whatever the length is for each leg, the hypotenuse is just times the square root of 2. Notice that these two are equal. They're the same, but then you would multiply by the square root of 2 to get that. So let's look at an example. Let's do something easy. Find x. Okay. So on these first examples, all I'm going to do is have you find the hypotenuse. Notice that 6 is the x is opposite the right angle, which is the hypotenuse. So that would be 90 degrees right there. And then, so that's the hypotenuse. So that means if you've got a leg, all you got to do is multiply by the square root of 2. And you would get the length of the hypotenuse. So if the length of the leg is 6, then I would just say 6 times the square root of 2, and I'm done. Easy peasy. Look at another example. And by the way, these are different ways to show that they're 45 degrees. If I use the congruent marks, then that means they're 45 degrees. Because the 90, remember, all triangles add up to 180, so 180 minus 90 is 90, and then if I'm dividing that equally, 45 degrees. Okay, so here, we got 9 square root of 2. Now this one's a little bit more difficult. I'm supposed to multiply that by the square root of 2. Because, remember, every time you go from the leg to the hypotenuse, you're multiplying by the square root of 2. If you went the other way, you'd be dividing by the square root of 2. So multiply by the square root of 2, well, as we saw earlier, when you're multiplying and they're the same, that's going to get rid of the square root. So that would give you 9 times 2. Because remember, 2 times 2 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. 2. Anyways, 9 times 2 is 18. And that would be your answer for the hypotenuse. Another example, very simple. Okay, here's one. Notice here again, notice all I'm putting here is that the legs are the same. If you see that the legs are the same, then you know it's a 45, 45, 90. And if it's a 45, 45, 90, then the hypotenuse is just the leg times the square root of 2. So this one is just 5 square root of 2. I'm really liking that, saying square root of 2 way too much. Anyways, all right, moving on. Okay, whoa, I forgot these ones. Okay, so now let's look at this one. What happens if I want you to find the leg lengths and I'm giving the hypotenuse? Okay, so keep in mind that if the leg lengths are the same and you've got the hypotenuse, then the hypotenuse h is always equal to, like if you're going from the hypotenuse back to a leg, you're going to divide by the square root of 2. Because then that will give you the length. Okay, so the length is just the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2. Or the leg is the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2. So in this case, I need to do 12 divided by the square root of 2, which, again, that's all you got to put, but let's rationalize it, just like we just saw, and you would get 12 square root of 2 over 2, which would leave you with, you could further that to 6 square root of 2. Okay, another example, and I'll let that one play through. Note, and again, these are all different ways of writing the 45, 45, 90. So notice how I draw the triangles. Very poorly, but I draw. Again, here I just said 18 divided by the square root of 2, and then I went ahead and rationalized it, and notice, and you might see a relationship between the answer and that hypotenuse. Now what happens if I give you a hypotenuse with a square root of 2? Well, that's just easy, sir. Square root of 2 and square root of 2, they cancel each other out. So I'm left with 5. Okay? And again, these should be hopefully easy examples. All right, now let's look at the 30, 60, 90. I didn't want to say the wording on that one's just too long. So let me do this. Let me back up a bit. In a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle, you have a short leg, which is we'll call S. The longer leg, in other words, the one opposite the 60 degrees, so the one opposite the 30 degrees is S. The one opposite the 60 degrees would be the square root of side times square root of 3. And the hypotenuse would be double. Double whatever the short leg is. So the short leg is S, the hypotenuse is 2S, and the long leg, the one opposite the 60 degrees, is S square root of 3. What does that mean? Give me an example. If I give you something simple, like here's a 30, and if you see 90 and I say 30 or 60, then you know you got a 30, 60, 90. If I put a 4 there, then I know the other leg is going to be 4 times the square root of 3. Okay, so when I go from here to here, multiply by the square root of 3. And the hypotenuse is double that. So times, it would be 8. So notice that we went like that. Okay, so let's look at an example like that. Oh, and I gave you the long leg, or the hypotenuse. Okay, so what does that mean? So keep in mind what you do. If you go from here to here and you're multiplying by 2, if you go backwards, you're going to divide by 2. So what we'll do there is say then, since I got the hypotenuse, always go back to the short leg. It's the easiest thing to do is always go back to the short leg first and then figure out what other piece you need. So 12 divided by 2, I need to divide that by 2, and that would give me 6. So the short leg is 6. Then if I know the short leg is 6, all I got to do is multiply that by square root of 3 to get the longer leg. So that's 6 square root of 3. There's your answer. Let's do another example. Okay, notice that this is 60, so that means up here at the top is going to be 30, and I want to find that short leg first. I want to find this one first. And if I'm giving you the hypotenuse, all you got to do is divide by 2. You get 5. That's the short leg, so x is equal to 5. And then if you multiply that by the square root of 3, you got the long leg. And there you go. Okay, a couple more examples. Okay, so here's another one. This time I'm giving you the long leg, and I want you to find the short leg. Now, again, if the long leg is the short one times the square root of 3, then I can divide by the, if I want to go backwards, I can divide by the square root of 3, and get that would be, the short leg would just be 7. And if the short leg is 7, then I can multiply it by 2 to get the long leg, and that would be 14. Another example right here. Oh, what happens if there's no square root of 3? Well, I'm still going to do, say, that long leg divided by the square root of 3, rationalize it, and you can see what happens there. Notice that ended up being 5 square root of 3. If you left it as 15 square root of 3 over 3, that's fine too. Then I'm going to still multiply that by 2 to get the hypotenuse and to get 10 square root of 3. Alright, so that's pretty much it. I'll stop right there, and if y'all do have more questions tomorrow, let's try that again. Please feel free to ask. Alright, we'll leave it like that, okay? Anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you so much for your time, and y'all take care.